Background working. Okay,
Yo,
my background's
everybody, it's
working.
your ride.
Let's start.
So let's get to
Can you
it.
see me?
I can see you. How are you doing today?
I'm awake.
I like that's the best thing you can do. Well, it's already started recording, so we're just gonna get ready into it because it just opened up recording. So,
Well,
yo, everybody, this is Heat Override, and I'm ready to bring the pain for you this week. I have a special guest this week. This is Martyrus. Introduce yourself.
hello there. This is indeed Martyrus, host of ReVGM, a podcast about video game music that has been rearranged, reorchestrated, and remade.
That's great. So, I have been listening to a lot of your episodes recently because I'm trying to get through your entire catalog. And I've got to start off first thing first, the way you do your episodes, the way you gear it towards one thing, and then you're able
Mhm.
to find the songs. It's just so different and it fits every time. How did you come about making that format?
Ooh, wow. Do you want the long story or the short?
Whatever you need, whatever you need.
Well, I guess I'll give you the brief. Well, I guess most of it was influenced by Rhythm and Pixels, hosted by Rob Nichols and Purnell.
Mhm.
They did a certain section of the episode, well, towards the end of it, where they did the bonus route and where they did the covers and remixes and arrangements of video game music. And I thought, why don't we do an extended version of that, like a whole show dedicated to that idea?
Yeah.
And so I took the idea and went from there. But the idea for me to do a podcast in the first place was actually influenced by a previous podcast I used to listen to called The Soundtrack Show. It's hosted by W.W. Collins, who actually works for Star Wars. Um, actually, oh gosh, I can't think of the name of it, but basically, he did a lot of sound design and even voiceovers for some of the Star Wars series.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So that's one thing I want to say with all of you, like being part of the VGM community and being there. Like, I'm just a sports guy straight up. So I don't like
Nah,
growing
I
up.
couldn't tell.
No, you couldn't tell. But growing up, it was kind of weird. I was one of those kids that just threw away all of his boxes because I felt like if I kept the box, I would trade the game in. So I have all of my games from like back then, except my Atari. My mom was throwing out a bunch of stuff one day and she put it on the porch, and my buddy stopped by and he picked it up and he won't give it back because he said my mom gave it to him. And I was like, no, but whatever. I still have my Nintendo, Super Nintendo. I got two TurboGrafx, 3DO. I got a whole bunch of stuff. So that was
Oh.
kind of the first thing I was in. Yeah. Did you ever play a TurboGrafx 16 or 3DO?
I'm sad to say I've played neither of those. So
Hey,
I've only been singularly playing with Nintendo, which, well, actually, I played Atari first off, the 2600, a bit of the 7200. And then, let's see, after the great ET craze, or lack
yeah.
thereof, say to speak, um, there was a Nintendo, starting off with the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yes.
Played that for a long while until I got to college. And after that, I actually got into the Sony PlayStation.
Mhm.
Actually, I recall buying my first PlayStation at a Best Buy
Oh,
with a credit card.
because you were like, hey, I'm of age now. I got a credit card. Let me try to get this thing. I
Oh
did a
yeah.
lay I did a layaway for my Nintendo 64. So it was just sitting there, but I had put away all the games with it. So of course, I had, what was it, Rogue Squadron, which that was an amazing game when that came
Hmm.
out. Woo! The
Oh
first
yeah.
time that you heard the Imperial March in that game, I think it was the fourth
Hmm.
stage. It was like one of the most like immaculate point. But that's one thing I wanted to talk about because everybody's love for VGM all starts somewhere. And I know that you have said this a few times on your podcast. Where did it start for you? I know that you said a game that I'm unfamiliar with was one of your first influences, but I guess pop in there and go into a little bit of Nintendo talk with that.
Oh boy, you have to make me remember what I said. Well, let's see. Oh gosh. Well, of course, I mean, start off with the Atari, playing all these video games and such. But what really got me into the music, I guess I would have to say, was in the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah.
And pretty much, I guess what woke up that was, let's see, it was Final Fantasy 6, which here in
Mhm.
the United States, I believe is Final Fantasy 3. Got the
Yep.
numbering.
So strange.
Listening to the opening sequence,
Yeah.
Omen, composed by Nobuo Uematsu.
Yeah.
It was
Dude.
amazing. It was jaw dropping, and it really caught my attention.
Mhm.
And oddly enough, I have to say, and I'm going to say this now,
Yeah.
sorry, Star Wars fans, but I think Nobuo Uematsu was definitely influenced by John Williams.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it
I'll agree with
seems
that.
like. You know?
I'll agree with that. I'm a huge Star Wars guy. I know we may have never
Mhm.
really talked about it. I've actually read a lot of the books. I read the Fate series on through. Abeloth is like one of my favorite characters. She was so villainous and everything. But so if you explored any of those, and I'm a huge Anne Rice fan. So I've read the Vampire Chronicles and the Witching Chronicles as well too. So that's kind of where it goes. My favorite comic book growing up was Hellblazer. So it was exactly about the same way that music it took me. And one of the first games, it was for the Atari 2600. It was like a star flying game, but it used the pad, and it had a
Mhm.
likeness to a Journey song. Can't remember offhand. I
Right.
want to think it was one of the songs, and I thought that was
Mhm.
pretty cool. And then kind of going forward with Nintendo, everybody always got the iconic Mario and Zelda, but for me, when you brought up Final Fantasy, you were correct. Like, I had to coax my guy into letting me use this game, and he was like, "I'll give it to
Oh,
you
dang.
one day." And I had already played Dragon Warrior, and he was like, "You don't like these games?" I was like, "I'll beat it," because I was like one of the cockier gamers back then.
Uh-huh.
And I ran my mouth. I beat this game because I found the Peninsula of Power, and I was able to level up, get everything and just walk it from there. But you had
Oh,
brought
yeah.
that up in the love for the music. Was there any other Nintendo games that influenced you?
Well, next, of course, would have to be Chrono Trigger.
Oof.
No, oh God, great story. Wonderful characters. The graphics were awesome, and a soundtrack that's just to die for.
Oh, you bring it up. So when I talk about Final Fantasy, we'll just call it Final Fantasy 6, Chrono Trigger, and Secret of Mana, to be blessed with three of those games right in that small time period was, I don't think people realize how special that was for a lot of people.
Oh, it is indeed.
So, I'm a huge Secret of Mana guy. When I played it with my brother, played it with my friends, over a few beers. I played it with my oldest daughter and my son, they're 25 and 22, right? And then when they released the remake, I then played it with my youngest daughter who was 12. So that's why like Secret of Mana has always held a little heart to me. But when you bring up Final Fantasy 6, that is literally always my number one as well too. And one of my favorite characters was Cyan. The music, his beat, and it was so like Western sounding, but that's what he kind of was because he was that samurai, and I loved his sword tech. So I was sitting there and I devised a way to with the game to get the haste on. So every time you get the level, you get the haste, and I figured around you cap that haste around 50, and your bars just fill up like this, and you're just slower checking. It is insane. But one of my favorite songs from that game was Blackjack. You know, getting the airship in Final Fantasy 1 was epic, but the first time you controlled the Blackjack in Final Fantasy 6, tell me you just didn't fly for hours.
Oh, oh man, yeah, it was quite an experience to say. It's like, oh, I can fly in a ship. This is awesome.
Mode 7, it was like, whoa.
Oh yeah, the Mode 7, yes, that was impressive for its time. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, I going over like, so like Axley used a little bit of that in, well, that was a really I thought that was a great game. One of my favorite games in my top 5 shooter games of all time, up there with some turbo games. And that's kind of where gaming did. But when you go and you think about the NES, you think about Jungle Stage 1, Metal Gear 2, Snake's Revenge. How do you start a game better, almost better than that? And the progressiveness, the beats, that off symbol in the background, it's like it always caught my mind.
Oh yes, definitely impressive.
So any songs from that era that might get, because I was listening to one of your questions today and you interviewed somebody, and he said, what I always find, I'm not quoting this quote for quote, what I always find is, what can you do with as little as possible?
Well, before I get this cat out of here, sorry about that.
That's okay. It happens. I've had some wild stuff happen on some of my podcasts.
Oh yeah. So, oh God, what was the question again?
I was talking about Jungle Stage 1 and what music around that time could would equate to that. What hit it off for you with maybe some of the 8-bit game? Because the question was when you asked the person, his response to you was, I want to see how much, what can you do with as much as possible, with as little ability as possible, is practically kind of word for word what he said, what he was
Oh
getting at.
yeah. I mean, considering the hardware at the time, you had to make every line of code count for that, especially for that track. I mean, it's impressive what these composers back then were able to do with a chip. And then some, I mean, one
Yeah.
example comes to mind is Yuzo Koshiro, of course. He did a lot of things with the chip, and then even beyond.
Oh, yeah.
It's impressive. Well, I mean, that's the one thing that comes to mind.
Yeah. See, and that's where it all kind of starts. So, taking that chip, that's why like so when I talk about the TurboGrafx 16, the turbo used a lot of like upbeats for that. So one of my favorite songs that I played was there was Blazing Lasers, which is I'm thinking is probably my favorite shooter of all time. They had one for the Super Nintendo called Space Megaforce. They added a couple more weapons, but the original Blazing Lasers and just the beats and how Area 4 was able to do it. And then like Area 9, how the beat in Area 9 is just completely 100% blitzkrieg because you have to fight every single boss in the entire game until you get to the last fight. It's insane. It's like when games were just so hard, you would just sit there and just work and work and work, and that music would get entwined in your head.
Oh gosh, speaking of games that make you work, you just brought up PTSD with uh, Ninja Gaiden for the NES.
Woo! Oh, you got it. That right there, Tecmo at that time had just the beats, but that, oh man, that last board was insane. What was your favorite stage? Did you love?
Oh gosh, would you believe the last stage?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because
That's
once
that.
I finally beat the last boss, like, oh god, I'm so done.
Yes, I have beaten that game too a few times, and then sometimes it just feels like you have to really get back into that mode to really get into that. And you're like, do I want to practice this for the next 2 hours? Maybe I don't know. That's where I
I
took
mean,
it.
yeah, I mean, there was one particular boss. I just can't remember when. I can't believe I played it so many times. I get killed, and I think it was the closest. I think it was one of my first experiences of uh of rage quit.
Okay.
I mean, just banging the
Oh,
control down, just not screaming at the screen, and I think
yeah.
after maybe the 15th time, I said I finally beat the boss. Like, ah, man, I
Oh,
can't believe I did that.
yeah. I had similar experiences, and for some reason, games just show up sometimes. So one of those kind of moments, and my buddy was there to witness it because he was getting pretty angry too, was Killer Instinct. For some reason, Idol would not just stop combo breaking everything. We would hit him once and he would just cook a combo breaker. And we were getting so angry. And we were at him for like 2 hours. And I'm like, come on, like neither one of us could beat this dude. And another time was Diablo. So Diablo 2 one time when they were still kind of making up the thing. So of course you can see I'm probably a huge Diablo fan as well. I couldn't beat
And I can't
Diablo on
tell.
dude. I love the new one too, but wait, I couldn't beat him. I couldn't beat Diablo. He kept kicking my butt. I sold everything, and then finally I found where there was a combat shrine here, and I hit it, warped, went in, popped, and I started fighting him with that, and I still had to keep buying and wearing him down, and then I killed him. It was like one of the hardest times I've ever had to fight Diablo in Diablo 2. It just made no sense, but yeah, rage quit. I was pretty pissed.
Oh yeah, but tell me something.
Yes.
Once you finally beat that boss or got over the hump,
Yeah.
don't you just feel just satisfied in the end? It's like after all that frustration, all that anger, and
Yes.
everything else that just raised your blood pressure and made your veins pop,
Yeah.
you just have a big sigh of relief, like, oh, I did it. And to actually have the street creds to say, yeah, I beat that boss.
Yup. That's like Battletoads. Battletoads. I beat both of them for the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. And I was
Oh
just
God,
like,
no, don't bring that up again. I can't get past the turbo tunnel. I just couldn't.
Oh,
I almost had the rhythm down, but I just couldn't keep up.
it's you just yeah, sometimes you just gotta bail. So me and my buddy had to do it. And you get to the last level before fighting the Dark Queen, and you practically start leaving each other behind. So then when we got there, I had to pick him up like a slam, pick him up and make the jumps myself. But I had to be precise because it hacked your, jump because you were carrying somebody. So you just had to get up, and then I would get to the next level where you had to fight some rats or whatever, throw them, beat some stuff up, carried him all the way up, and that's how I was able to beat it with him. But it was so hard. We had to take the warps. So I had played through a single player, memorized all the warps, of course, and then me and him just kind of got it together because he was like in gaming sense, and I don't know if you've ever had this, but in gaming sense, he was like the one dude that was actually like connected with me that I didn't have to say anything to. I had my other buddy that I trained, and like he was like, okay, he understood what I was doing. I never had to mention anything to my buddy Dewan. Like we could beat Contra 3 Alien Wars on hard mode without a game genie. And our friends literally called us out during a party one time and we just beat it right in front of everybody. Just watched it. It happened. That's what you got to lay the gauntlet down.
Like I said, you get street creds.
Yeah. So, do you have a question for me? Because I know you have some questions that you like to ask. So I was like, you know what? I know he might want to open something up for himself as well.
Well, have you ever thought about doing a podcast on video game music?
I do have a top 50 where I do play some of the music. So what I want to do in the future is I want to do like tops lists. So when I brought up the shooters tonight, Axley, and then Blazing Lasers, I was thinking about doing, five of those, five songs with that, and then going that route because it's kind of all fun.
Ah, I see. I see. So
And
I get the feeling that you also bring the pain when you're playing video games, right?
yeah, me and my friends, you could tell we were betting on Tecmo Super Bowl and then regular Tecmo Bowl. So we were highly competitive as friends, as well as the guy that I was talking about. He was the guy that me and him was sitting there just dollar, 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 passing dollars all night long, just playing Madden, in 1994. And then that got boring, and we started playing soccer. So we played FIFA 94, and then we got into hockey, NHL 94. So it was kind of a whole thing, and it opened us up actually to the soccer genre because that was a different kind of music experience for me as well because that was more like when it got more around the 2001s, you got into Moby and artists like that. So
Interesting. Okay. Now, since you're letting me ask questions,
Mhm.
let me go to my typical three questions if you've actually been listening to my episodes.
Yeah,
Are there any particular video games from which you enjoy the music?
yes. Oh, you want my
Like,
games? It's definitely
like,
fun. It's Final Fantasy 6. You're gonna look at Mega Man. I'm gonna bring up ActRaiser, the original
oh,
ActRaiser. When
um,
when you get into that again, I'm kind of like I said when I talked about Cyan, I'm like that. I played D&D, Dungeons and Dragons growing up. I even I've been writing and I was rewriting my own Dungeons and Dragons game that I was coming off of. It has its own thing, just a whole rolling system and everything because I've always been enthralled by, the medieval times, medieval fantasy, dragons and things like that. So, when I get into games like that, that's it. So the ActRaiser music, and that's why, of course, science music having the heavy kettle drums, if you say if those were kettle drums, influences me 100. And then, of course, Mega Man 2. Mega Man 2 is just, when I first started it off, so when, a lot of people always just go, Wily Stage 1. Yeah, that was like when I first heard that song, like everybody else in this entire world, your mindgasm went off. It was a boom. And, and so, but really, another thing was when music started talking to me was the Bubble Man stage. So when it starts out, it goes do 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 do. I heard blue, red, and cheese, and then I said it to my friends, and my friends listened to that stage, and then they're like, "Dude, we can't get it out of our head." It was just something that was really in me. So those soundtracks I really did enjoy. But I will say, as of recent, it's been Elden Ring. Elden Ring's soundtrack is beautiful. The suspense and the music when you're fighting the bosses, that's why when I brought it up to you the other day, I just like it's a hard game. Don't get me wrong. Talk about
Oh
rage
yeah.
quit. You know, there's videos. So that game's music though, just the climatic points of some of those music, like when you first fight the fire giant, the gong of the bell, that whatever they're doing. My dogs
Right.
thought my doorbell was going off, but it was just like because I play in surround system. So I mean, quick fact, when I was growing up, I've always had my Nintendo systems hooked up to some kind of a system. And it had always so I've always had bass and loudness to all my video games. That's how I know it.
Ah, so basically a 5.1 system.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, now I got a 7.1. But hey,
Oh,
we move up
nice.
in the world.
Nice. Now, are there any particular tracks of which you've heard remixes or covers of that you enjoyed?
I gotta go straight. It's One Winged Angel. Anytime you now originally One Winged Angel,
A one-winged angel. Oh god, why am I
One
not
Winged Angel.
surprised?
It is the normal, but when you go into a full metal version of it, it's awesome. But I am a sucker for Kefka's final uh, theme as well too. So hearing that as a
Ooh,
cover,
yeah.
in we've heard it all in orchestral and everything like that, but when I actually hear it done with like a rock and roll dude and he's just jamming it out, it takes that song and it's long. It's long. It's longer than the One Winged Angel. And that's what people don't get is like, yes, One Winged Angel is like 6, 7, it's almost 7 minutes of just pure insanity or whatever. Send it, listen. But man, to hear the progression when you step through that final song in Final Fantasy VI, that was what true gaming is about.
Oh yes, indeed, indeed. Yeah, even though the other one was in Latin.
Hey, I can sing me some Aladdin too. I mean, fun fact, I'm a huge Rob Zombie fan because of Way of the Warrior. So again, I
Ah.
but them putting that soundtrack word for word, like playing it the first time I started, my buddy talked me into it because I had rented the 3DO and stuff like that, and from this Zappers place. So then I went, I gave it back, and I went and bought my own. And he was like, but the game he rented, he was like, dude, you got to get this White Zombie. I bet it's good. And we didn't think it was the completely unedited version. And that was the first time I ever heard Planet Motherfucker. And I was like, holy shit. And that's and Black Sunshine. I can't even get enough. And Cosmic Gate number 8. I mean, I think that's what it is. That whole thing. And that game controlled so bad. Have you ever played, because you said you didn't play the 3DO. Way of the Warrior controls like it's worse than muscle wrestling for the Nintendo. It is the
Ooh.
worst controlling game in the world. But you jump like as high as Capcom and versus, Street Fighter. So you have these big Mortal Kombat looking graphics and these huge, like it's all real people. And then you're getting beat down. They beat the hell out of you. And they get these potions and they just slam the hell out of you. Meanwhile, Rob Zombie's like, yeah, come on, come on, come on. And you're just like, oh, yeah, man. It's very unfair, man, in that game. That's some rage moments too.
For a moment, I thought I was listening to Purnell, but hey, maybe next time we'll get Purnell on the show.
Maybe, one of these times, we could do like a StreamYard thing where we could just bring everybody in and just do like a live event and just go nuts because, I'm down for stuff like that. And I have guys that, through the website that I can host big parts of that. But yeah. So, and your next question?
Well, that's a question I'm sure you're very familiar with already. Um, what one or two tracks would you put on repeat?
So I'll say it's Science Beat from Final Fantasy VI.
Hmm.
I have listened to that song over and over, and I can't, it's really hard for me to separate anything on this next game because there's really two games that really define a genre, and it's Super Castlevania 4. That
Ah,
soundtrack front to back, I have memorized, my mind has memorized every single action I do in this game because of course I've kind of perfected the game. Everything I do in that game, from every part of the music, from every beat, I can imagine in my head because of that. So that's why one song on that whole entire soundtrack will never be able to stand above. But I mean, when you first got to the first four bosses, and yeah, all the remixes to Bloody Tears and everything was great. But when you heard that, And then you when you got to the Grim Reaper and he formed and it was like whoop 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 whoop. I was like, oh, I it just and then just the whole build when you walk up the steps to Castlevania or
Mhm.
to Dracula in Super Castlevania and it does that ooh, and it brings in that beat. Oh, I
Uh,
just
nice,
that's gaming
nice.
ecstasy right there.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I guess we'll have to leave it at that because it looks like time's running out. So
Is that
before we end this program for a little bit, I will say that you can go to my website, re-vgm.com. You find all the episodes there, a list of all the covers and remix artists that have been featured, and some gaming news here and there if you're interested. You can pretty much follow me on social media on Instagram and Twix, Twitter X, as I call it, at re_VGM. I also have a Discord channel, finally, after all this time. I
hey.
tried to remember to post in my show notes, so I'll try to keep that updated. Do note that if you do first join, you'll see there's just a list of channels. There's no text, but give me moments because I do check it often. I'll give you a role so that you can post texts, media, and memes to your whim.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
as for the podcast itself, you can find me on any streaming service that you have, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, or Podbean, Podcast Index, Podchaser, or Deezer. And you can also find me on terraplayer.com, either online through the browser, through the app on on Google devices and Apple iOS devices, and even on Tablet Fire. So that's it.
yeah, that's a great one. That's great. I definitely love everything together. Did you have the timer on over there? How much time did they give us? Do we have left?
I don't know. It's showing me less than 40 minutes.
Less than
So
40.
on the title bar. So yeah, 40 minutes, blah. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, usually it gives a warning. So
mhm.
let's talk it to the warning, unless you want to end it from here. That's on you, depending on how you want to go from there. And
uh hmm. Actually, that's a good question there. So out of curiosity, are there any other VGM podcasts that you've listened to so far?
I have listened to, of course, because Alex, the messenger, he's in
Hmm.
Erie here. He was the first one that got me into it. And then I listened to Professor Tom's The Shujin Academy. So I've
Oh
got to
yes.
those guys. So yeah,
Hmm.
like his style with yours and everything like that. So that's the one thing I want to bring up is the way all of you the names you guys say. These are some names that are hard to say. Now here over on the sports side, I don't always get hard names to say, but you guys really just nail these guys out. And to me, that is true. That's a true work in its art. And I'm thankful as a person to hear all that go down. So to when you're talking about your episodes and the way that all of you deliver and the way that the knowledge that you all give going into each episode, I don't know if a lot of people understand how much time that some of these episodes make, the timestamps that you guys do, the dedication that you guys set aside to do that so that people can listen and experience, the story that you're telling. So when you played two songs, both Dr. Mario, I had brought up to you that that was something about my mom. My mom she is eternally buried with my day one Dr. Mario because she used to kick the shit out of me and my friends at that. And my buddy and me, we were trying to figure out what the hell she was doing. And we looked at it and I was like, hey, he goes, she doesn't attack just from the front and the sides. She attacks from underneath. She attacked from everything. So she was like a freaking monster at Dr. Mario. and she even played Super Metroid. She loved playing that game, but she really, really, really laid it down. And she, to me, that's why when she passed, I had peace. It was one of those dumb luck moments that she had to have like an emergency surgery, and she went in, and so I was able to say hello, goodbye, kiss her. She said she loved me, and so when giving her that game, it wasn't letting go of like everything because I do have Tetris and Dr. Mario for my Super NES, but
Hmm.
at the same time, I have I also have that passion for gaming as well too. All
Hmm.
right. So you can find me
Yes.
at anywhere. Bring the pain, Dr. Roto for everybody. Actually, it says we got 10 minutes left. So,
Oh yeah.
so it's on you. You ready to
So
go? Let's go.
well, let's go with what. Well, let's see. So you listen to that. Have you listened to Rhythm Pixels yet?
I have not listened to that yet, but
Well,
I
you're
hear
in
you
for a
mentioning
feast.
it.
Oh yeah. I mean, they are one of the influences there. And actually, what really kicked me off was VG Emporium, hosted by Rage Cage.
Okay.
Because so
Okay.
technically, in a sense, we're podcast brothers because he started a month earlier.
Oh,
And
oh,
actually, come to think of it, my 2 year anniversary is coming up. So
oh. Now that's awesome. Yeah, and that really just shows how much, again, going back to the dedication, because you keep all of your episodes right around there. If you go about to an hour, you go to an hour. But if you want to flip it back and you want to go back and just keep it short and simple, that's what you do. You keep it like that. And when you brought up Rage Cage and everybody sharing their episodes in there, I also like the fact that, with those in those rooms that people share all different sorts of music, and then of course the art as well too. Carly's
oh,
art.
dude. It, it's interesting watching all these podcasters how they process and produce their podcasts. I mean, Rage Cage, I'm just amazed at all the art he's able to do with his. Of course, VG was VGM, ex VGM Radio. Also, they do some art as well.
Hmm.
Rhythm Pixels, yeah, their thumbnails impressive as well. And I have to admit, I'm not actually a great artist myself, so it's just like, okay, find a picture, kind of paste my transparent logo, boom, there, it's done.
It is.
But for what I lack, at least the best trait I have is that I have a passion for this video game music and for video games as well. So at least I have something to share.
That's right.
You know, Rage Cage. He definitely has quite a head on on chips and chip tune music, and that's impressive. So at
Hmm.
least I know I can go to him, say, "Hey, I heard this track. What do you think about it? Or what's the chip going on?" Or I can send him tracks his way, say, "Hey, I heard this. You might like
Yeah.
this." You know,
Yeah, the collaborations that every that it,
Mhm.
that it, having that likeness, that love for the video games, the connection through the video games, but ultimately the video game music, because again, a lot of people don't really pay too much attention to the video game music, or sometimes they just let it go by. But then they let music, like like I'm a huge, so I'm a fan of DJ Magic Mike, and he was a big part of that, like right there around that Final Fantasy age, where the sound that I was listening to my video games, and then the sound of the music was evolving because he was evolving. That's when one of my favorite albums of all time came out, was Final Frontier. And it just was mind setting at that time. So it was like one of the best years of just not only my life, but of my friend's life. The Madden, like I said, the whole Madden 94 era, the 93, 94 years. So, seeing the collaboration that all of you do, and then being part of it, and then joining the discords, and then seeing all that, that's just that. But I can't say it enough. Credit goes to all of you, and especially yourself too, for how much you put into your episodes and how you cleverly put them together. Because the one I just I and you
well, I mean, I have to be honest because when I was trying to figure out how this, I was like, how am I going to do this? Because yeah, of course, every podcast they have a topic, they have an interest, there might be a game they want to talk about. Okay, cool. The first few episodes, I was like, okay, I think I got a topic here. I can do this and that. And at one time, I thought, oh God, how am I going to keep this going? And then I got to one of my favorite websites of all, daysoftheyear.com,
oh
in which there is a holiday to celebrate on any day.
yeah.
And any day will have multiple holidays. And this is like, great, I can use this. And
Right.
I'm sure you're surprised by how I connect these tracks to to those holidays I celebrate. It's like, wait a minute, there's a holiday for a pharmacist? My gosh.
Yes. Well, I mean, the July 4th, that was like pretty much set up, but you were like, I'm doing it. I am doing my July 4th one. But
Mhm.
like I said, also, I mean, talking about, I'm at, we're at stage of where you're, because I think I've completed 25%. I'm up to date on everything you got, 25% going back. Then I have some like jump ends in the middle, like I went down to like, your
Mhm.
bond time. And then, so I'm back and I started at one and I've been working up. So I just got past your Masters of VGM four pack, which that was crazy. I liked that the way you put everything down, and like what was it? The Remy, or was it Remy, right? That episode?
Rexy.
Rexy,
Well,
Rexy.
which one?
Yes, the Rexy one. The
Oh,
one of when she was the master of the VGM, right?
oh, actually, well, gosh, actually, Rexy, that was recent. She's actually part of the special episode of On Stage Now.
Yes, yes,
Those are
that's it.
due on a monthly basis. Yeah, Masters of VGM is a whole different. That's
Yeah,
actually,
yeah, that's it. I got it because I'm listening
yeah.
to so many ones. So that was in.
God.
But yes, yes, the your newest episode on stage with Rexy. That just the whole set the mood for me today because like the way you came in right from the pianos, but then you threw in that the Mega Man song. I was like, whoa, hey, I was like, oh, that got me. I'm sitting there like I have a big garbage can and I'm pushing it and I'm throwing boxes in it and I'm listening to that. It's like, what's going on? But I love it. It just gives me like, it starts the day, honestly. And that's how it works. So it's like when I see something new go through, it's like, all right, hit the new stuff, back to the catalog. And like I said, you have a lot of 30, 40 minutes episodes. So there's times I'm just in a room, so I load it all up, I pop it, and then I just let it go. And 2 hours later, cleaning a sink or just switching out a dishwasher or scraping out an oven, I'm sitting here listening to your episode, keep my mind calm, and I'm just in another zone,
Mhm.
doing my job, getting paid to listen.
Um, oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know I look like it, but honestly, I'm not much of a talker. Maybe it's with something that's very interesting to me, like video game music. Yeah, I'll probably start firing off left and right here and there, but I'm generally a quiet person.
I could,
I know I don't look like it, but
yeah,
I don't talk much. I do
well, you
type a
let your
lot.
music. Yeah, I mean, your music though, your music,
Yeah.
you let your music do the talking for you, but you also, you always follow it up with, with a prelude, and then you come in at the end,
Hmm.
explaining your feelings after a couple set, and then that's I think the thing, the way you flow through it. So it doesn't
Oh
matter if
yeah.
you're like, hey, I might not be the most talkative person. Look, I've heard about on other episodes on other podcasts that they've had some nightmares, like a Jericho episode. He had like, I don't know, one of the guys on from back then, and the guy didn't talk at all, and he was like, it was tough, and there was three guys, and the one guy wanted him on. It was like Michael Sweet. That's what
Hmm.
it was. Michael. It was the Michael Sweet episode, and it was George Lynch. George Lynch wouldn't answer anything, and Sweet was like getting annoyed with him during the episode, like, "Why won't you talk, man?" And no, you. I didn't know you didn't talk because guess what? You talked a lot, and you're about to get a voice transcript of this, to use for everything. Like I said at the everything, but man, we're looking at the final 2 minutes here. I want to thank you
Oh,
for
2 minute
coming on.
warning.
Yeah, yeah. I want to thank you for coming on Bring the Pain. And anytime you want to do this again for your podcast or any ideas that you might want for an upcoming one, maybe some TurboGrafx 16 music ideas or something like that, the door is always open, my friend. You are definitely an awesome dude. And once I complete your catalog, I will continue to listen to every one of your episodes. Thank
Ooh,
you.
well, that is very much appreciated. Though, did you miss that New Year's episode that I posted last time? I mean, I did put a little bit of a TG16 in there.
Ah, yes, I did. I did catch that. You know, it just to me, it's. I'm waiting to see what you find because you dig things up from like where I wouldn't even think to look. Like you'll go and you'll be like, hey, I found the stage four to Blazing Lasers, but I found it in not an electronic way. You're gonna do it in a piano way, and it makes it a whole different song. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you.
Oh, you are very much welcome, man, and very much appreciated.
All right. Well, you have a great day. And always remember to bring the pain while you listen to all the VGM music in the world while you VGM. Check out Martyrus on his platforms that he mentioned earlier. Everybody else, have a great day.
Yo, everybody, it's Yola Rider.
Peace.
So let's get to it. Bring the pain.